Our world today presents us with so many difficulties. The problems seem almost impossible to overcome. We look to our religious leaders, our political leaders, spiritual leaders to make a difference, to make a change in the world. But it doesn't happen. Instead of looking at someone else to make changes in the world, it is time for us to look within. Each of us has the power and the responsibility to change the world. We cannot wait for others to step up and make changes. We need to take matters into our own hands. And that is what we're going to talk about this evening. I do have a PowerPoint to share with you. As many of you know, for many years I was a mental health practitioner. My expertise was working with children, and especially with children when there were allegations of abuse involved. I'm not going to traumatize you by talking about the children with whom I came in contact, but I will say that the inhuman acts committed on other human beings, especially young ones, never ceased to horrify me. And it continues to happen today. And it happens all over the world. Everywhere we look, we see evidence of cruelty, anger, injustice, hatred, and so on. These things aren't just happening to other human beings. They are also happening to animals and to our great mother, the earth. We want it to stop. We want to live in a world that is filled with love, with equity, with kindness, just like the world these children are looking at. As a mental health practitioner, I want the legal and judicial systems to stand up and protect children, and to protect anyone who needs to be protected, who deserves justice. As a voter, I want our politicians, our elected officials, to legislate equity in a kind and caring way. As a grandmother, I want our earth to be protected and nurtured, to last for generations to come. As a seeker on the spiritual path, I want our spiritual and religious leaders to come together and advocate for peace and unity. The truth is, it doesn't matter what I want. These are systems that are created by human beings and that are run by human beings and are therefore imperfect. Some might even say that these and other institutions, human institutions, are actually responsible for maintaining the status quo. Albert Einstein said, "We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them." What a profound statement. What do we do then? What do we do? Who can change the world? I'm going to take a little side trip here for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to this all-important question. In order to help us understand ourselves as human beings, a number of theories regarding human growth and development have been formulated. Many of these are called stage theories because they discuss the development of individuals as they pass through various stages in their lives. Some of the better-known stage theories include Jean Piaget's cognitive stages of cognitive development, Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, Freud's stages of psychosexual development, and Lawrence Kohlberg's stages of moral development. The theories imply that the stages are linear when people go from one stage to the next stage to the next stage and to the next stage. But that's not necessarily true. Sometimes individuals vacillate between stages, and given certain life circumstances, some people may skip a stage altogether. Again, it depends upon the individual. In 1981, James Fowler published his book, Stages of Faith, The Psychology of Human Development and the Quest for Meaning. Fowler's work, often considered to be groundbreaking, describes 6 stages of faith maturation. In his 1987 book, The Different Drum, Community Making and Peace, M. Scott Peck discusses 4 stages of spiritual development. He bases his stages on the work of Fowler. Fowler differentiates between religion and faith. He says that faith is part of humanity's effort to find meaning and purpose in life, and that religion is essentially part of a social structure. Faith, according to Fowler, is universal. His focus, Fowler's focus, is on faith development. Fowler conjectures a pre-stage, a preliminary stage. This focuses on the earliest portion of life, including the time in utero up to about the age of 2. A time of faith development based on trust in the environment and in the initial steps of separation from the caregivers. If the infant's needs are met by its caregivers and it experiences trust and security, then the child has a stable base from which faith will continue to develop. The first full stage of Fowler's stage theory focuses on preschool children from about the age of 2 to about the ages of 6 or 7. He calls this the intuitive projective stage. Children at this age are very egocentric, and they create meaning from their own experiences based on their own perceptions, regardless of the reality of the situation. For example, if a child gets scratched by her cat and gets angry with her cat, and then in a short period of time, something happens to the cat, and the cat dies or runs away or gets lost, the child may perceive that she caused this to happen because of her anger. So therefore, her experience and her perspectives give meaning to the situation. At this stage, children gain their perspectives on God, afterlife, and similar matters from their caregivers and from their environment. Many children at this age tend to perceive God as somewhat ambiguous and magical. Now, please note that we are not talking here about children who actually remain in touch with the unseen world and therefore have a more accurate understanding of reality. The next stage in Fowler's theory is the stage of the mythic literal. This focuses on school age and preteen children. During these years, children begin to understand causality. They can distinguish between reality and fantasy. They're still very egocentric, however. They tend to believe what is told to them by their faith communities in a very literal way. They tend to see God as an anthropomorphic deity, strict, strong, and just. According to Fowler, Some individuals remain in this stage throughout their entire lives. I think we probably know people like that who remain in this stage of faith development. The next stage of faith development, according to Fowler, is the synthetic conventional stage. This mainly focuses on adolescence. Egocentricity continues, but it's now coupled with the ability to think abstractly as well as concretely. The person in this stage is able to evaluate concepts that are presented to them. Interest is focused on social groups. Teenagers begin to develop their individuality, especially in relation to values, relationships, and commitments. They develop a faith based on beliefs and values. But most of them have not likely reflected very much on the meaning of their faith. One important aspect of this stage, according to Fowler, is the need for a religious authority figure. For younger adolescents, this may be a parent or some other important adult. While for older adolescents and adults, this figure may be a friend or someone from the religious community. In any event, the individual looks to that figure for guidance. Again, Fowler contends that many adults never move out of this stage of faith development. The next stage is that of the individuative reflective stage. As young adults begin to undergo a variety of experiences in life, they may begin to reflect on their faith, seriously examining their beliefs, including their dependence on authority figures for guidance. This typically happens when events occur in life that cause dissonance with their faith. For instance, if something happens in the life of a young adult and the faith, their belief system can't explain it logically, then the person may turn to questioning, may turn to analyzing their faith, analyzing the value of having a religious authority figure. Although this reflection generally happens in young adulthood, the 20s, it can happen at any time in life. I think that many who come to seek the ageless wisdom come because of this dissonance between their faith and their experiences in life. The fifth stage, as discussed by Fowler, is called Conjunctive Faith. This will typically happen in middle age. Individuals are now capable of analyzing other belief systems and using that analysis to either amend or support their own beliefs. Individuals are able to merge seemingly disparate concepts, as well as to recognize and accept that paradoxes exist, and they don't have to feel a need to protect or defend their belief system. They're also able to recognize that there are many pathways to truth. And indeed, they may even find that learning about the belief systems of others strengthens and deepens their own. The sixth stage, according to Fowler, is universalizing faith. At this point, individuals focus on serving others without concern for self. According to Fowler, they seek a more inclusive justice and the realization of love. Fowler's work, these 6 stages, provide the basis upon which M. Scott Peck set forth his perspectives on spiritual development in the different drum. M. Scott Peck identifies 4 stages of spiritual development. Peck calls the first of these stages the chaotic antisocial. Individuals in this stage are egocentric. While they may say they love and care about others, they're primarily concerned for themselves, their own wants and needs. And they can be manipulative in self-serving in acquiring what they want. They essentially have no principles strong enough to override their own selfish desires. Many of us may know or recognize people who remain in this first stage of Peck's development. In an effort to move away from the chaos of that first stage, Peck speculates that some individuals move on to a second stage that he calls formal institutional. Here, an individual becomes affiliated with some type of institution that provides stability and security. This stage is marked by a focus on rules, which also provide stability and security. Individuals in this stage of development may be perceived as dogmatic and legalistic in their beliefs. Because security and stability within the institution are of paramount importance, any change or any challenge to the institution or beliefs can cause tremendous upset and feelings of threat. According to Peck, the majority of churchgoers and believers can be found in this stage. They are likely to perceive God as an external, transcendent being who is both loving and punitive. Peck points out that stage 2 individuals can be found in every ideology. Once again, my guess is that we all know someone whose spiritual development is focused in this second stage. Individuals in Peck's third stage, which he calls the skeptic individual, tend to self-identify or be perceived as non-believers, atheists, agnostics, or scientifically minded individuals who want researched and logical explanations for the meaning of life. These individuals do not need the structure of an institution, and they feel free to question their beliefs. Many people in this stage are actively seeking answers to the meaning of life. They focus on social justice and work for social reform. Those who continue to seek may find themselves in Peck's final stage, the mystic communal. Here, individuals focus on community rather than on individualism. They remain aware of the value inherent in the previous 2 stages and are non-judgmental in their perspective about those stages. These individuals focus on unity rather than on separateness. They accept the lack of definitive answers and look to the mystery of the universe as part of the spiritual process, willing to live in the unknown, searching for the unknowable. So beautiful. Willing to live in the unknown, searching for the unknowable. Pulling from both of these theories, I think we can create a theory that may shed light on our own spiritual development and answer our question of who can change the world. Our first stage in this theory could be called egocentric and concrete. This person or the person in this stage does not look beyond himself or herself and perceive situations in a very concrete manner without any analysis or evaluation. In other words, a person in this stage of spiritual development isn't concerned about what is happening in the world as long as he or she isn't impacted. So what if there are people starving in Syria? I have enough food, they might say. This individual will also make meaning from his or her own experiences, regardless of the reality of the situation. We had so much snow last winter. There is no such thing as global warming. We know people like this, don't we? If this person holds any religious or spiritual beliefs, they're likely to be anthropomorphic and literal. Some individuals remain in this stage throughout their lives. We're not likely to see these people taking steps to change the world, although I'm quite sure we have seen people like this. The second stage of our theory could be called the hang on to my security stage. Individuals at this stage of spiritual development are more capable of analysis and self-reflection. However, they also tend to attach themselves to institutional thinking. They find safety and security in the institution as well as in its beliefs. Because the institution provides a sense of safety and security and even community, individuals in this stage will strongly defend the institution and its beliefs. The institution can be any type of organization, religious, political, spiritual, or any other kind. We can clearly see the egocentricity in this stage of spiritual development, although it's not quite as narrow as it was in the previous stage. Once again, we are not likely to see individuals in this stage of development taking steps to change the world. In fact, it is likely to be just the opposite. They want to preserve the institutions, the organizations that provide them with a sense of safety, security, and community. They want them to last forever. We move on to the next stage of our theory, questioning. In order to grow spiritually, we must question. We must question our beliefs, looking at them analytically and reflectively. We must determine what is true for us at this particular point in our lives and at every point going forward. Individuals in this stage are growing spiritually. There is no defensiveness about protecting beliefs or the organizations that espouse them. Rather, there is open-minded inquiry and an active seeking of answers to the meaning of life. Many individuals in this stage focus on and work towards social justice for all beings and for our earth. It is in this stage that we see individuals who not only wish to change the world, but who are taking steps toward changing it. The final stage of our theory could be called unity. As we allow ourselves to grow spiritually and to deepen our understanding through questioning in the previous stage, we move into a recognition of the unity of all beings. We are comfortable with the paradox of separate individuals within the unity of the all. These individuals continue to work for social reform, but that work deepens. as we come to the realization that what happens to one happens to all. Most of us would likely consider ourselves to be in the third or fourth stages of our theory. We are open-minded, seeking, reflecting, and most importantly, working to manifest the unity of all life. So, the answer to our question, who can change the world? It's you. It's you and me and many, many others who not only want to change, but are willing to take the steps to change. But you may be wondering, what else can I do? What else can I do? Well, that answer is, of course, different for each one of us. However, we are each responsible for changing the world, so we must find ways to do it. Many of us have spent our lives trying to help others, either in our full-time jobs or in our volunteer work. Many of you work with homeless shelters, food pantries, social service organizations. Others have joined demonstrations and marched for social justice, while others have worked with animal rights groups and joined with ecological organizations to save our planet. The list goes on and on. However, there is another important way that each of us can change the world. We are talking here about an occult or hidden way to change the world. And like many occult teachings, it is hidden in plain sight. H.P. Blavatsky writes, "It is an occult law that no man or woman can rise superior to their individual failings without lifting, be it ever so little, the whole body of which they are an integral part." Read that again. She is telling us that every time one of us takes a step forward on the spiritual path, no matter how small, all of us, all of life moves forward on the spiritual path. She is telling us that it is an occult law that when we expand our consciousness, no matter how little or how large, we are expanding the consciousness of all beings. The importance of expanding our consciousness cannot be overstated. It is of paramount importance, and it is the answer to our question. We can change the world by changing our consciousness. When I contemplate the many instances of inhumanity inflicted on others, on animals, and on our earth, it becomes clear to me that these acts are symptoms. When people don't care about others, when they are stuck in stages 1 and 2 of our stage theory of spiritual development, we find that cruelty, hatred, anger, injustice, and so on is often the result. We must address the root cause, because constantly addressing the symptoms will never fix the problems. We will never feed all of the hungry people. We will never stop the cruelty to animals, we will never be able to stop the damage to our Mother Earth. We are simply putting a Band-Aid on a festering wound that continues to infect the body of humanity. I can think of no other way to put it. A Band-Aid on a festering wound that infects all of humanity. And the root cause of these symptoms? No understanding of the unity of all life. Especially in stages 1 and 2 of our theory, there is no understanding that all life is connected, that we are all one. As the consciousness of humanity expands, then awareness of that essential unity expands. Until the consciousness of humanity changes, nothing will change. Again, Einstein's words. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. We have to change our thinking. We have to change our consciousness. And by changing our consciousness, we change the consciousness of all that lives. Every step we take on the spiritual path is forward movement for all humanity. Many of us are already using techniques such as meditation, contemplation, self-reflection, listening to that silent voice within, in-depth study of the ageless wisdom, and so on. We use these techniques to help us walk the path, and we must continue to do so. But there's more that we can do. Many people seem to think about reaching enlightenment or expanding consciousness or becoming one with the ground of all being, whatever we want to call it. Many think of it as a destination, that we are moving toward this place of enlightenment or expanded consciousness. This, much like the experience in the physical plane of existence, is an illusion. All, and I will say that in quotes, all we have to do is recognize that we are consciousness. All we have to do is recognize that we are consciousness. We are not these physical bodies. Rather, we are consciousness inhabiting the bodies. When we break through the veil that blinds us to reality, to the reality that we are consciousness, when we break through that veil, we begin to see clearly. We recognize the impermanence of the physical world and work toward the dissolution of the personality while still using it as a tool. This is a difficult concept to discuss using language. However, for me, it is a little bit more easily grasped through contemplation and meditation. The closest thing I can come to describing this process, and upon which I have meditated often, is an old Persian story. The fish were swimming in the pool, beautiful fish. One of the fish began to think about water and had a desire to experience it. Little did the fish know that he was surrounded by water, that it supported him. It provided him with life. It passed through his gills. Water was so much a part of his life that he never stopped to look at it and to realize that he was immersed in it. The same is true of us and consciousness or enlightenment. We are immersed in it, but we aren't aware. Awareness of this allows us to begin the dissolution of the physical and to step into consciousness. Mystics and spiritual leaders throughout time have talked about the dissolving of the personality, of the self, and merging into the whole. Thich Nhat Hanh writes, enlightenment for a wave in the ocean is the moment the wave realizes it is water. When we realize we are not separate, but a part of the huge ocean of everything, we become enlightened. We realize this through practice, and we remain awake and aware of this through more practice. Lao Tzu tells us, to the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. Eckhart Tolle writes, you are not in the universe. You are the universe, an intrinsic part of it. Ultimately, you are not a person, but a focal point where the universe is becoming conscious of itself. And of course, there's Rumi, who writes, I have lived on the lip of insanity, wanting to know reasons, knocking on a door. It opens. I've been knocking from the inside. There is no door. There is no outside. There is no inside. There is just consciousness. This is how we change the world, you and me. We change the world by losing ourselves and expanding our consciousness, thereby expanding the consciousness of all beings. Thank you.